What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Erasure. Going back to their sophomore album, the 1987 album Circus. You know, people have mentioned it since I first started reacting to this, and, you know, I've since sort of come to realize why, sonically and vocally as well. But yeah, that this album was a big breakthrough, and it sort of, you know, garnered a lot more attention for their work in subsequent albums, so I've been conscious of that as I've gone through it, and again, a number of the tunes have been like really enjoyable to me. You know, I'm thinking Victim of Love, that was a tune that I did sort of remember once it started. In particular, there's a sort of like synth melody that comes in about like, I don't know, halfway or 2/3 of the way through the tune, and that was like very nostalgic. It's like, oh my god, I remember hearing this. So yeah, like I have realized that I was part of, you know, what this album did for their trajectory and their popularity, because, you know, even though some of the tracks that I really remembered into the modern era were from some of their other albums, not only their debut album like Who Needs Love Like That, but also from the Innocents like Ship of Fools and so on, and Chains of Love. So yeah, bottom line, not only have I enjoyed going through their catalog, but as I've gone through this album, there's been a couple tracks where it's like, oh man, like I remembered that, like obviously this was being played on the radio, and like, you know, it was capturing my ear, even if, you know, over the years some of the songs got sort of buried just by time and other music and so on. But yeah, bottom line, we're going back to the 1987 album The Circus, and we're going to listen to a tune called Spiraling. You know, it's a single word verb title, conjugated accordingly. But yeah, bottom line, spiraling, generally speaking, relates to going down. I mean, I suppose one could spiral in ascent, but generally speaking, we're talking about descent. And obviously, you know, whether you're talking about like literal aviation or, you know, flying as like a metaphor for moving through your life, or sort of navigating sort of obstacles or dangers in the sky of your life, so to speak. Spiraling makes me think of what happens when you begin a sort of terminal descent, where, you know, in like, again, strict aviation terms, you've lost control of the aircraft, and it's essentially just the sort of centripetal force along with gravity taking you to a rapid and violent stop. So yeah, spiraling, if one were to articulate it like emotionally or you know, socially or interpersonally at the very least, and obviously, you know, emotionally in conjunction with psychology, I think it might relate to someone who feels like they've lost control, who feels like a situation is spiraling out of their hands, out of their ability to influence it or turn it in a direction that feels more appropriate or beneficial. You know, given Erasure songs, it makes me think it might relate to a relationship where, like, what at first was a great connection now feels like it's, you know, slipping out of their hands or becoming sort of increasingly dark and heading like down a dangerous road. So yeah, spiraling generally gives me sort of negative implications or connotations, so again, that might not be the case. I suppose one could like spiral like into like a focus, like towards something, a commitment, or, you know, one could use the verb spiraling in different ways, but generally speaking, it makes me think about losing control and descending, whether in a literal or a figurative sense. So let's get to it. This is Erasure, Spiraling, from their 1987 album, The Circus.
I try hard to put you out of my mind.
Well, there's your answer.
Every night alone, I'm thinking about you. How could I avoid this pain without you? I won't cry. Be sorry no more.
That's an interesting line.
I know that this is something I'll get over. Maybe I can learn.
Feels like we're waiting to break out.
It's just a matter of time. A matter of time. Just because. doesn't mean that I'm afraid to talk to those people I know that might have seen you return.
Maybe we're not going to break out.
Keep reminding myself I won't look back, won't regret a single moment. I'm gonna mend this heart inside you.
It's a healthy disposition.
It's just a matter of time.
Could be more or less responsible given context, but generally speaking, you can't beat yourself up about the past.
It's just a matter of time.
Very ambient tune, as it turns out. I kept waiting for like a real sort of synth poppy beat to come in, but it doesn't feel like that's what we're doing at all. It feels like a synth pop like church session or something. It's just the organ perhaps, but it does kind of feel like a circus though, like bum, 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 bum. Having a hard time catching this echoed kind of in the distant vocal delivery. Yeah, I'm not sure what was said in that last section. Again, it does seem to be about a resolution on the part of the narrator, whether, you know, Andy or speaking through the eyes of someone else. Because again, you know, my understanding is once I started reading that bonus bit, or in the deluxe edition of Chorus, there's some information about how he, you know, began writing songs about, you know, what it might be like to deal with him if that he was on the other side of the sort of interpersonal relationship. So yeah, I'm not sure whether this is more from his experience or if he's writing in that idiom. But it did seem to be about a connection that used to be there, isn't there anymore, and the narrator is speculating, you know, how do I move on? Like, you know, I can't deal with this pain without you, but the pain is stemming from the fact that you're not here. So there is sort of like this, you know, conundrum, emotional and psychological conundrum. But it also seemed like, again, there was a resolving to not let the past serve as an impenetrable or an unbreakable anchor. The idea that, you know, I'm not gonna be sorry anymore, I think was one of the lines. So perhaps there is a sense that, you know, whatever happened, you know, I feel like in the moment or over time, I tried my best to keep it working. So even though it's not, and even though I'm hurting, you know, I'm not going to beat myself up anymore. I'm going to, you know, try to put the pieces back together, perhaps. So yeah, let me know if you got an angle on the lyrics. Musically, like I said, at first I was waiting for a real sort of, you know, Vince Clarke bass line, kind of peppy sort of groove to come in, but it just kept with that sort of ambient, again, almost like redemptive sort of, like a church-like atmosphere, but then it sort of switched into that kind of like bright circus type of feel. So it was interesting how like the same layer, the organ, or the organ like keyboard, really sort of gave me two very distinct vibes as the track played out. So yeah, another top tune. It shows me a little bit more range or diversity of composition than perhaps I noticed up to this point on this album, so I enjoy that. I like when an album does some different things, has, you know, some different flavors, a sonic buffet, if you will. But yeah, shout out to Vince, shout out to Andy. Let me know what you think of the tune. I will see you next time.